Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video, we're going to be drawing Venom versus Carnage for the upcoming movie. I think it's in theaters right now, actually, if you guys want to go see it. But first, we're going to talk about last week. I was supposed to upload Monday last week around 5 p.m., which is when I normally upload. However, my English teacher moved my essay back a week, so it was due a week earlier than I expected. And I just had no time because I didn't read the book until then, or I didn't finish the book at least. So I had to finish the essay. She just kind of dropped it up on us last minute. So that's why you didn't get an upload last week. Next week should be fine. Should be back on track. But anyways, let's get right into the video. So let's get started with materials. First off, we have a 4H pencil and an H pencil. So the blue one is my 4H and the black one is my H pencil. The 4H is where I do all the thinking in my drawing. Alternatively, you could use a red or a blue colored pencil just to help you get the layout of your drawing down. But the main goal is to have structure that you can use that won't show up in the final pencils, or it will be like barely noticeable in the final pencils. Now, if you were to ink your own drawing, you could just use pencils and then skip kind of the second sketch portion of the drawing. However, I find you can get very easily lost if you don't have a solid outline with the pencils. And one of the benefits you get from just doing ink on rough pencils is your final piece will be a lot more free flowing. It's not going to look very stiff. Um, Keep in mind that we are going to be working traditionally, so we can't erase the inks. That's really why I want to have this finished out and really solid before we get into it. It's just that we can't erase the final inks. It's going to be very rough to do it, so we're kind of stuck with whatever we put down. Now, just in case we make mistakes with the pencils, I have this. This is a Pentel Presto fine point. Um, this is going to let us, it's basically white out in a little thing like this. You press down on it, squeeze to get it out, and that will help us fix some of the mistakes we get in ink. Hopefully, I won't need to use it, but we'll see. Now, alternatively, if you don't have that or just don't want to get that, you could use this bleed proof white. This is good because it lets you get a little bit finer of a point, but the issue I find with this is that you have to dip something in to spread it around and apply it. But it does give you a lot more of a fine white line, so that might be good if you're working with hatch marks in like the darker areas that you want to get down. That's probably what I'd use it for. Aside from that, it's better to use the Presto. Now, let's talk ink. So for this one, we're gonna be using a Speedball Super Black India ink. This ink is pretty good. However, it is a little bit costly and it's in a really small container. So once this little container runs out, I'll be getting a larger container, maybe of this ink, probably another one's. Oops, I got a little drip right there. 1 second. Um, Now really the brand of ink isn't the most important. What really matters is that you are using India Super Black ink. That's the main thing you want to go for. Aside from that, there are other black inks you could use. This is a Higgins right here, and the problem is this one right here is actually not waterproof. I think they do sell a waterproof one, but this one is non-waterproof. I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me just focus it. Yeah, non-waterproof drawing ink. So that one's not the greatest. We can't really ink with that. So if we smudge it a little, it's just not great. So you really want to be using waterproof India black ink. Now we're also going to be using microns. These pens right here are pretty good. What we're going to be using these for is really lines where we want it consistent, the same width, and not very much change in pressure. That's what these pens are best at. They come in a whole bunch of sizes, which is great. So that will help us get a lot of the things down with the figure that we need symmetrical. It's great for hatching too. You don't necessarily have to get the ones I have right here. You could also use Copics. They have good multi-liners, which are just their equivalents of the Sakura microns I have right here. They work just as fine. Now, the main thing we're going to be using to ink is this G pen right here. It comes off in a separate nib in the pen, and that's how we're going to be applying most of our ink onto the page. We also have a 102, or a Japanese equivalent of a 102, which is just a thinner pen. They'll give us a little bit less variation. I don't first see us using it in this piece, to be honest with you guys, because if I want something like that, I'll probably use a micron. But if you guys want to see it, here it is. Let's just focus on that. Yeah, these come in a multi-pack like this. The green pen right here is the G pen nib, and this right here is the one we're gonna be not using in this drawing. And for paper, guys, we're gonna be using this A4 paper right here. This paper right here, it's used by most Japanese comic artists, not really as many American comic artists, because it's substantially smaller. The paper is a lot thinner. Um, and here's what I find: it's a lot easier for me specifically just to scan this in, which is why I do a lot of work on it. But the amount of details you could fit in it is nowhere near as much. So that's really the downfall of this paper. Also, it definitely scrapes a lot more when using the dip pen. Hopefully we don't run into too many issues with that in this drawing. But without any further ado, let's get right into the drawing. Now, I had a couple thumbnails picked out for this. Really, I landed on more of both of them punching each other or preparing to punch each other layout. It's definitely going to be very challenging for me to do just the two textures on the two characters. They're very similar, however, I definitely want to make it show that they're not the same and they look different. So, here's what my plan is. I'm planning to go in with a lot more hatching on the Venom, and then for the Carnage, I'm gonna do a lot more brush or dry brushing on it to get the gray values, and I think it will turn out great. But right now, we're just getting down the pencils. First, we're going in with the 4H, like I said. We're just going in, to reiterate, we're just going in, getting all our layouts done, and then we're going to be going in with more detail with the H pen very soon. Now, one of the big debates I was having, like, before I was even started this was what materials to use, because obviously, this is like a Marvel slash, American comic kind of character. So I was thinking I was going to use the American comic book materials, which would be, the 102 I mentioned earlier, and just a bigger piece of Bristol paper. Um, it really comes down to creating the video with better quality. I find that it's easier to record on this type of paper since it's smaller. I run into less issues lighting the video because I noticed that when I work on A4, sometimes I notice that the top left and the bottom right are too different in terms of lighting, so that you're getting a bit of a shadow there, which I don't really want in the recordings. And when I'm working on an A4, just because it's less area I have to film, you're not going to see it as much. I could get it all in proper lighting. So that's really why I chose to do this, for the sake of making the video. And when you're working on a A4 instead of the Bristol, you really, you don't get lost very easily in the details, which is what I thought might happen if I did this on Bristol. Um, the last time I used Bristol, I didn't run into that problem, but it tends to happen if you don't plan to use simple shapes, especially in the beginning, which I feel like these characters, they're not going to be using simple shapes probably. There's like a whole bunch of details on these characters, so I really didn't want to get lost into that. And one of the tools that I'm going to be using later in this that I forgot to mention is a Tombow. So a Tombow is basically a micron and a dip pen, kind of like a fusion between them. It's a brush tip pen, and you could get a lot of line variation. That's kind of like the dip pen. However, it's like a micron where you could use it in any direction. You don't have to worry about dipping it. And I really like this tool for certain things. I'm just going to be using it on little parts of it that I felt like I couldn't get to with the dip pen without worrying about smudging it. Um, Talking about the Venom versus Carnage movie, I'll probably see it in a couple weeks. I saw Venom, the first one, even though it came out in 2018, like a little while ago, very recently, and I don't really have the craziest expectations for the film. The first one was not the greatest movie. It did pretty bad on like IMDb and all those other things, but it's just like a superhero movie to watch, and even though the movie is coming out, and that's like the reason that I decided to make this video, I'm not gonna be going with the movie designs for the characters. I find that those are very non-elegant as compared to the comic book art that you see out there. I really like the Venom and Carnage comic book artists. I'm not the craziest about the CGI that they used in the movie in terms of like design, especially on like Carnage's face. I find that it looks really strange, but hey, you know what? At least they brought it to live action. You know, this is one of the characters you wouldn't even expect it to make to live action because it's like, first off, Venom is like, it's a Spider-Man villain based off Spider-Man, and then Carnage is like a villain based off Venom. So it's like three di- it's like two times down the main character. So you really wouldn't expect it to make it into the movie universe, but it's pretty cool. I've read some of the Carnage comics. Um, I think the one I saw or read most recently was Absolute Carnage, I believe, and that one was crazy. I was just reading it, and I was so lost because I don't really read that much Marvel. If anything, I read more DC, and honestly, I've kind of lowered my consumption of just most entertainment more recently, just because I have less time to consume and that kind of stuff. So, but this one was very good. I was just so there was just so much that happens, and if you guys haven't read it already, I'd go recommend doing that. But I don't think there's really too much more to be said about this. I'm just gonna go ahead and end the video around now. Uh, like, comment, subscribe, follow my socials in the description. You know the deal. And here's the final drawing. Hopefully you guys like it. I put in some time with it. Used a dip pen, which I hope you guys like. It's more of a older style tool. It takes a little bit longer to get the results you want, but you can get some very beautiful and really nuanced lines with it. So I'll see you guys next week, Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern. See ya.